The roar of the truck engine faded into the dense pines of the Montana Rockies, leaving Leland standing alone on the narrow dirt trail, his father's parting words still ringing in his ears like a slap. "This is what happens to boys like you," Robert had snarled before flooring the gas, abandoning his 22-year-old son in the middle of nowhere with nothing but the clothes on his back and a small day pack. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the wind whispering through the trees and the distant call of an eagle overhead. Leland's knees buckled as the reality hit him full force. He had just come out to his father during their supposed father-son camping trip, and this was the consequence. No hug, no discussion, just rejection and exile in the wild. He had chosen this remote spot in Glacier National Park thinking it would be safe, away from the prying eyes of their conservative small town outside Bozeman. Mom had passed 5 years ago from cancer, and Leland hoped the isolation would allow Robert to listen without the pressure of neighbors or church friends. But when the words "Dad, I'm gay" left his lips over the campfire the night before, Robert's face had hardened like stone. He didn't yell at first. He just stared, then packed up camp in furious silence, muttering about sin and weakness. The drive deeper into the backcountry had felt endless, and when they stopped at this forgotten trailhead, Robert ordered him out. "Figure it out on your own. Don't come back until you've fixed yourself." The truck was gone now, and Leland was truly alone. Panic clawed at his chest. His phone showed no signal, the battery already low from the hike. He had a half-empty water bottle, a granola bar, and the thin jacket he'd worn for the cool mountain evenings. No tent, no map beyond the vague one in his head, no compass. The sun was high, but shadows lengthened quickly in these valleys. "I can't die here," he whispered to the empty air, forcing his legs to move. He started walking downhill, following what looked like an old game trail, his boots crunching on pine needles. Every step echoed the betrayal. Growing up, Robert had been the rock, teaching him to fish the Yellowstone River, cheering at football games even when Leland preferred sketching landscapes. But the Bible verses at dinner always carried an edge when talk turned to real men. Leland had hidden his truth for years, dating girls in high school to keep peace, but after college and a quiet life in Bozeman working as a graphic designer, he couldn't lie anymore. Not to himself and not to the man who raised him. Hours blurred. Thirst burned his throat as he sipped sparingly from a clear stream, praying it was safe. Hunger gnawed, and he rationed the granola bar into tiny pieces. Blisters formed on his heels, but he pushed on, climbing over fallen logs and pushing through thick brush. The terrain grew steeper, and by late afternoon, he realized he was lost. The trail had vanished into undergrowth. Fear turned to anger. Anger at Robert for this cruelty, anger at himself for expecting acceptance. Tears finally came as he slumped against a boulder, the vast wilderness stretching endlessly around him. Night fell fast. He gathered dry twigs for a small fire using the lighter from his pack, the flames offering meager warmth against the dropping temperature. Wolves howled in the distance, or maybe coyotes, and every rustle made him jump. Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by memories of family dinners where Robert praised his straight-laced brother, who now lived in Denver with a wife and kids. Leland had always been the different one, the quiet artist. Now that difference had cost him everything. Dawn broke cold and gray. Leland's body ached, but survival instinct kicked in. He fashioned a walking stick from a branch and continued, marking trees with his pocket knife to avoid circles. By midday, he stumbled upon a wider creek and followed it downstream, hoping it led to civilization. His mind raced with what-ifs. Would Mom have understood? She had been softer, always hugging him after school. Robert's lie to the world had always been that their family was perfect, unbreakable. But this abandonment shattered that facade. Exhaustion made him dizzy, yet he kept moving, whispering affirmations. "I'm worth more than his hate. I am who I am." The afternoon brought rain, soaking him to the bone. But he found a shallow cave for shelter, and dried by the fire, he restarted with trembling hands. As darkness returned, loneliness crushed him. He missed the simple things, coffee with friends, late-night talks about dreams. But most of all, he missed the version of his father who once said, "I'll always have your back, son." On the third day, Leland's strength waned. Dehydration set in despite the creek, and his steps slowed. He rationed the last of his food. Berries he foraged cautiously after remembering a survival show. The mountains loomed indifferent, beautiful yet merciless. Then, around noon, he heard voices, human voices. Hope surged as he pushed through bushes toward the sound. There, by a larger river, stood a man in a ranger uniform checking a map. Tall, broad-shouldered with kind eyes and a short beard, the stranger looked up in surprise. "Hey, you okay? You look like you've been through hell." Leland collapsed into the man's arms, sobbing for the first time without shame. The ranger's name was Grant Harlan, a seasonal park employee patrolling remote trails. He gave Leland water, a protein bar, and radioed for help, but the storm had washed out roads, so they had to hike out together. As they walked slowly, Grant listened without judgment when Leland shared the bare truth. "My dad left me here because I'm gay." Grant's expression softened. "That's not right. No one deserves that." For the first time in days, Leland felt seen. Their conversation flowed easily under the open sky, Grant sharing his own quiet life in the park, away from big city pressures. By the time they reached a ranger station at dusk, Leland had a spark of hope. Survival wasn't just about the body, it was about the heart learning it could still beat after betrayal. Grant drove Leland to the nearest town in his beat-up Jeep the next morning, the engine humming steadily along the winding mountain road. The ranger station had provided dry clothes and a hot meal, but the real comfort came from Grant's steady presence. No pity, just practical kindness and quiet questions that didn't pry too deep. "You've got grit, Leland. Most folks would have given up after day one." Leland stared out the window at the passing evergreens, his body still sore but his mind clearer. The abandonment had stripped him bare, forcing him to face the fear he'd carried since high school. Being gay in their Montana town meant whispers at church picnics and sidelong glances from neighbors. Robert had enforced that silence with his iron will, quoting scripture like armor. Now, Leland wondered if the man he'd called Dad was capable of love at all, or if it had always been conditional. They stopped at a small diner in Whitefish for breakfast. Grant insisted on paying, his easy smile lighting up the booth as they ate eggs and toast. Conversation turned personal. Grant revealed he had left Denver 5 years ago after his own family struggles. His conservative parents had distanced themselves when he came out at 25. "I found peace here in the park. The wilderness doesn't judge." Leland nodded, feeling a kinship he hadn't expected. "I thought coming out would free me, but it just got me dumped like trash." Grant's hand rested briefly on the table near Leland's, not touching but close enough to feel supportive. "Freedom comes in steps. You've already taken the hardest one." Back on the road, they talked about everything. Leland's graphic design work in Bozeman, his dreams of illustrating children's books, Grant's love for hiking trails and photography of wildlife. The miles passed quickly, and when they reached Bozeman's outskirts, Leland hesitated. "I don't know if I can face my family yet." Grant pulled over. "You don't have to alone. Stay with me tonight if you need. I've got a spare room." That night in Grant's modest cabin on the edge of town, Leland slept deeply for the first time since the ordeal. The spare room was simple, with a view of the mountains, but it felt safe. Morning brought coffee on the porch, and Grant listened as Leland unpacked more. The lie Robert had told their church group years ago, claiming Leland's quiet nature was just shyness, hiding any hint of difference to protect the family's reputation. He always said family comes first, but this proves it was a lie. Grant shared stories of his own growth, how therapy and time in nature had helped him accept himself without needing parental approval. "You're not broken, Leland. You're brave." Their bond deepened over the next days. Grant took time off to help Leland recover, driving him to a doctor for checkups and helping him report the abandonment anonymously to park rangers as a lost hiker. But Leland knew the truth had to come out eventually. Flashbacks haunted him during quiet evenings. He remembered Robert at Mom's funeral, holding the family together with stoic strength, promising, "We'll get through this as men." Yet that same strength had turned cruel. Leland wrestled with guilt too. Had he pushed too hard? No, the rejection was Robert's choice. Grant encouraged journaling, and as pages filled with raw emotions, Leland began to see his identity not as a flaw but as part of his strength. Society's pressure in small-town America weighed heavy. News stories of similar cases flickered in his mind, but Grant's calm voice grounded him. Change starts with one voice. They hiked easy trails together, Grant pointing out birds and flowers, their shoulders brushing in companionable silence. Friendship bloomed into something warmer, though unspoken. Leland felt his heart lighten, the wilderness trauma transforming into a turning point. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was rebuilding. When Grant suggested contacting his sister Emily in Denver, Leland agreed. She deserves to know what Dad did. The call brought tears. Emily's shock and immediate support. "Come stay with me. We'll figure this out." But Leland knew the real confrontation waited back home. With Grant beside him, he felt ready to face the lies that had defined his life. The emotional weight lifted slightly, replaced by quiet resolve. He was no longer the scared boy left in the woods. He was a man choosing his path. Weeks turned into a month as Leland settled into a tentative routine at Grant's cabin, the Montana summer giving way to cooler evenings that mirrored the shift in his heart. Grant's support became a steady anchor, their conversations stretching late into the night over shared meals of grilled trout and fresh vegetables from the local market. Leland opened up about the internal storm he'd hidden for years, the nights questioning if his feelings for boys in high school made him unworthy of his father's pride. Robert always pushed the man-up talk, like softness was weakness. "But loving someone doesn't make me less of a man." Grant nodded, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "It makes you more real." I learned that the hard way too. Their connection grew deeper, not rushed but built on mutual respect and shared vulnerability. Leland found himself looking forward to Grant's return from ranger shifts, the simple act of making coffee together feeling like home in a way Robert's house never had. Flashbacks intensified during solitary walks. He recalled the family vacations to Yellowstone, Robert teaching survival skills with pride, never imagining they'd be used against his son. The lie Robert perpetuated, that their family was a model of traditional values, now felt like a chain. Leland's brother Michael in Denver had echoed Dad's views subtly over calls, but Emily's messages urged truth. "Dad told us you ran off after an argument. He said you needed space." The deception stung. Grant helped Leland process it through long talks on the porch, the mountains a silent witness. Confronting the lie doesn't mean hating him forever. It means claiming your truth. Society's shadow lingered too. Leland avoided town errands at first, fearing whispers, but Grant's quiet confidence rubbed off. They attended a small community event together, hands not quite touching but shoulders aligned, and Leland felt the weight of prejudice lift a fraction. One evening, after a hike to a scenic overlook, Grant paused at the edge. "You've grown so much in these weeks, Leland. From the broken guy I found to someone ready to stand tall." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Leland reached out, their fingers brushing in a moment of quiet understanding. It wasn't dramatic, just honest. A spark of possibility amid the healing. Internal conflict raged. Was he rushing? Could love bloom after such trauma? Grant sensed it. No pressure. "We're in this together." The next days brought practical steps. Leland resumed freelance design work remotely, sketching scenes of wilderness resilience that mirrored his journey. Grant introduced him to a local support group for LGBTQ folks in Bozeman, where stories of similar family struggles echoed his own. One man shared how his father's rejection led to years of silence, only broken by a health scare. Leland realized his path could differ. He had survived the literal wilderness. Now the emotional one called. But tension built as news from home filtered in. Emily reported Robert claiming Leland had chosen a different life, painting himself the victim to church friends. The lie expanded. Robert told neighbors the camping trip ended with Leland storming off independently. Anger fueled Leland's resolve. Grant encouraged a letter first, but Leland knew a face-to-face return was inevitable. "I'll go back when I'm ready, with you if you'll come." Grant agreed without hesitation. Their bond strengthened through small acts. Grant teaching Leland basic first aid refresher. Leland helping organize Grant's photos into a portfolio. Nights brought deeper talks about identity, how being gay in America meant navigating invisible lines of acceptance. Leland's growth showed in his posture, his voice steadier. The crisis had forged him. Yet doubts lingered. Could family ever heal? Robert's hidden hypocrisy gnawed. What secret did his father guard so fiercely? The question simmered as they planned the trip home. With Grant's hand on his shoulder one crisp morning, Leland whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." The wilderness had taken his fear and given him purpose. The drive back to Bozeman felt shorter with Grant in the passenger seat. The Jeep loaded with Leland's few belongings and a quiet determination that had replaced the panic from months earlier. Autumn colors painted the Rockies in gold and red, mirroring the internal shift Leland had undergone. Grant's presence was steady, their conversations light but laced with support. "Whatever happens with your dad, remember you've already won by surviving and choosing yourself." Leland nodded, gripping the wheel tighter as familiar landmarks appeared. The diner where he'd first felt safe, the trailhead where everything changed. Home loomed, a modest ranch house on the town's edge, its porch light flickering like a false beacon of normalcy. They arrived unannounced on a Saturday afternoon. Emily had flown in from Denver for solidarity, her hug at the door fierce. "He's inside. Mom's picture is still on the mantel. He hasn't changed a thing." Robert sat in his recliner, the TV droning sports, his face aging since the abandonment but his posture still rigid. Shock flashed when Leland stepped in with Grant. "Son, you're back." The words hung heavy. Leland's voice stayed even. "Yeah, Dad. After you left me to die in the park because I'm gay." Robert's denial came swift. "It wasn't like that. You needed time to think. I told everyone you chose to leave." The lie spilled out, exposed in the living room's stale air. Emily gasped. "You said he ran away after a fight. Not that you stranded him." Robert's eyes darted, but Leland pressed on, voice cracking with months of pent-up pain. "I survived because of people like Grant here. Real support, not conditional love." The confrontation escalated as Robert defended himself with scripture and tradition, claiming it was tough love for Leland's sake. But cracks showed. Robert admitted the church pressure, the fear of town gossip. Grant stood silent but solid, his presence a contrast to Robert's isolation. Leland shared survival details calmly, the hunger, the fear, the growth. "You lied to everyone, Dad, to protect your image." Robert's face paled, the hidden truth emerging. Years ago, he'd covered up a cousin's similar struggles, forcing silence to save the family name. It wasn't just about Leland. Robert's own buried shame fueled the betrayal. Tears came unbidden, but Leland held firm. "I forgive the fear, but not the abandonment." The room fell silent, Emily mediating with quiet strength. Grant suggested space, and they left for a motel, giving Robert time to process. That night, Leland and Grant talked under motel lights. "You did it. You exposed the lie without breaking." Their hands linked naturally now, the emotional bond deepening into quiet affection. Leland reflected on societal pressures, the same ones that shaped Robert into a man afraid of difference. Growth felt real. Internal crisis resolved into clarity. But family ripples continued. Michael called from Denver, stunned, offering tentative support. Society's eyes watched, town rumors spread, but Leland ignored them, focusing on his art portfolio inspired by the wilderness. Grant's love offered balance, their walks in local parks healing old wounds. Tension rose as Robert requested a second meeting. "I need to make this right." Leland agreed, but on his terms. The return had shifted power. No longer the abandoned son, he was the truth-bearer. Decisions loomed: stay in Bozeman rebuilding ties or move forward with Grant. The choice crystallized. Family could evolve, but only with honesty. As leaves fell outside, Leland felt the high point approaching, his heart ready for whatever came next. Robert's second invitation came via Emily, a neutral coffee shop in town to avoid the house's heavy memories. Leland arrived with Grant and his sister, the autumn chill sharpening every sense. Robert looked smaller, eyes tired from sleepless nights. "I was wrong to leave you there." The lie. It started to protect us all, but it ate me up. The admission cracked the facade. He confessed deeper. His own youth held unspoken questions about identity, buried under marriage and church expectations. "I saw myself in you and panicked. Thought if I forced you straight, it'd fix us both." The hidden lie fully exposed. Robert had written letters to a distant relative years ago, urging silence on similar feelings, then erased the history to fit the perfect father mold. Leland listened, anger mixing with pity. "You sacrificed my life for your comfort." Robert nodded, tears falling. "I want to change. Therapy, whatever it takes." The conversation stretched hours, emotions raw yet controlled. Grant offered perspective without judgment, sharing how his own parents' slow acceptance had taken years. Emily pushed for family counseling. Leland's internal growth shone. He chose measured forgiveness, not full reconciliation yet. "Prove it with actions, Dad. No more lies." Societal fallout hit. Church friends distanced themselves, but a few reached out with surprising support. Leland's decision to stay in Bozeman part-time, splitting time with Grant's cabin, marked maturity. Their relationship blossomed in quiet ways, shared sunsets, honest talks about future dreams. Grant's steady love countered the prejudice Leland still faced at work, where a client once questioned his lifestyle. Leland stood firm. "This is who I am, and it's not changing." Family dynamics shifted gradually. Michael visited, awkward hugs turning to real dialogue. "I didn't know Dad's pressure ran that deep." The betrayal's consequences rippled, forcing everyone to confront biases. Leland's art flourished, a gallery show featuring wilderness survival themes drawing crowds and sparking conversations on acceptance. Grant proposed a joint hike back to the original trailhead, symbolic closure. There, under the same pines, Leland released the last resentment. "I survived because of the truth, not despite it." High emotions peaked in reconciliation talks at home, Robert attending his first support meeting. Yet Leland knew healing was ongoing, not instant. Choices defined him: prioritizing mental health, building a life with Grant, maintaining boundaries with family. The journey's logic held. Every misunderstanding, every sacrifice led to this awakening. As winter approached, Leland felt whole, the gay man's path from abandonment to empowerment complete in spirit. Winter snow blanketed Bozeman, turning the ranch house into a quiet stage for final reckonings. Leland and Grant moved in together at the cabin, their life a blend of routine and adventure. Morning coffees, evening hikes, shared laughter that healed old scars. Robert's changes showed in small ways. Weekly calls, attendance at family dinners where topics stayed open. "I'm learning, son. Your truth isn't my enemy." The exposure of his lie had dismantled the walls, allowing genuine bonds to form. Emily and Michael joined video calls, the family circle widening. Leland's internal conflicts resolved into peace. The identity crisis that once raged now fueled purpose. He launched an online series of illustrations depicting gay journeys in nature, resonating with strangers across America facing similar pressures. Societal echoes persisted. Local news covered the story anonymously as a hiking mishap turned lesson, sparking town debates on acceptance. Leland faced it head-on at community events, Grant at his side. Their love, rooted in survival and trust, proved stronger than prejudice. One crisp evening by the fireplace, Grant whispered, "You turned pain into power." Leland smiled, knowing the pivotal choices. Confronting Robert, embracing support, choosing growth, had defined his manhood. The high point crested in a family gathering where Robert publicly apologized at church, not for show but from the heart. "I abandoned my son because of fear. That lie ends today." Tears flowed, healing incomplete but real. Leland hugged his father, the embrace carrying years of unspoken weight. Yet he held boundaries, living his truth unapologetically. As seasons turned again, Leland reflected on the full arc, from the wilderness abandonment to the stable joy with Grant, family mending, self fully claimed. The relationships, romantic with Grant, fraternal with siblings, paternal with Robert, wove a tapestry of resilience. Sacrifice had yielded awakening. Betrayal birthed authenticity. The story closed not in perfection but in forward motion, Leland thriving as the gay man who refused to stay lost. Is it true or false that a father's love can only be unconditional if he confronts his own lies first?